All right. Looks like I may have waited too long to shoot the video. The sun is starting to come through the tree now. I was in a shady spot just a little while ago. Anyway, today's episode of pipe smoking and autism is going to expand into AI. So it'll be three topics now in this type of video. Because I often have conversations with Grok on X Twitter, and I'm very interested in AI, especially the interactions. It can be very enlightening, so to speak. Okay, first off, I've been experimenting with black raspberry leaves. Okay, I dried a bunch of them recently by just cutting the vines down and drying them like this. As you can see, they're still very green. Okay, now if they're just on the vine and not cut down, but they have died, the leaves look like this as opposed to this. Okay. Now I've tried smoking these and these, and these are much better, I have to admit. But how do I get them to be like this when it's so much easier just to cut the vines down and dry them like this? Well, I probably won't know until the fall to see if they actually naturally do this. But for now, I can artificially do this by damaging the vine and waiting for some of it to die. When, for some reason, when these die on the vine that is partially still alive, they do this. I think what happens is the plant draws back some of the nutrients in the leaves, maybe, I don't know, or tries to preserve. There's a chemical reaction obviously going on there to turn it this color. Anyway, these taste better to smoke. Okay, so I gathered a bunch of them this morning, and I'm going to light it up to see how it works. Right? It works okay, but it doesn't stay lit. The green stuff doesn't stay lit, at least. I forget about these aged leaves. I don't know if they stayed lit well or not. I think they did, but I'm not sure. And I'm liking the taste of the black raspberry over the red raspberry. In case you don't know, I stay away from sweets. So anything that tastes sweet uh, affects me. I stay away from it for that reason. It affects me because I think it releases some insulin or too much insulin, and I start to get fatigued and that kind of thing. And also, I start to store fat. Whenever I taste something sweet or eat something sweet or consume any kind of carbohydrate, I get fat easily and fatigued and uh, emotionally distressed. Okay, so I'm mainly on a all protein and fat diet with some plants occasionally, like lettuce and spices. And lately I've been experimenting with apple slices, just thin slices of apple with apples that are not too sweet. And the reason that I chose apples is because they're in season right now and they're excellent up here in Vermont. I can't resist, but I think they still make me fat, but at least it helps with the digestion somewhat. I got to admit that too. Yeah. All right. So let's see how this lights up. Pardon me for wandering around on these topics. These are my fancy matches. My favorite. Yeah, it's the same with the green. It doesn't stay lit very well. But it does taste better than the green leaves. Yeah. And I haven't noticed any side effects other than the usual slight irritation and bitterness with leaves like this. The same kind of thing happens with grape leaves, although I do like them. I just don't want to have any type of brain fog or nausea or something like that that some of the other leaves are giving me. So I'm trying different things until I can settle on a favorite. Now I did bring some corn silk as well to try to mix with these leaves to see if it would stay lit, but I probably won't have time to do that. I want to keep these videos under 30 minutes. Yeah, I don't have much luck keeping this lit. And it gets really gooey, and I don't know how to say it, but it gets gooey and not gooey, it clumps. The raspberry, the black raspberry, tends to clump. So the air doesn't pass through. Not like some of the other leaves, uh, like the mugwort is the best burning, and then the silky dogwood is number 2 for burning. Uh, this will clump, and the air doesn't pass through very well. So I got to figure out something to mix with this. Yeah, and I'm not looking for a mind-altering effect other than meditation. In case you're just tuning in, I like to smoke a pipe to meditate, to decompress. I use meditation instead of medication to decompress, okay? And I'm liking the black raspberry, yeah, a lot. And I think I'm going to gather some more grape leaves. But this fall, as the temperatures start to decrease, I'm going to be watching to see if the leaves can be gathered or foraged before they fall to the ground. Yeah, that'll save a lot of time because I can gather a ton of leaves that way. And all I got to do is make sure they're fully dry. Yeah, which is very easy. I just put them in baskets and dry them that way. I can put the baskets on the shelves that I've got in my shop and stuff. And piece of cake. Why is it important that it stays lit? Because I just want to sit and enjoy the puffing while I'm meditating. If it keeps going out, it interrupts my meditation process. I suppose I could make this whole thing a kind of like a stimming, the lighting and the puffing, the lighting and the puffing. But stimming isn't all that great. Yeah, it worked as when I was younger, but as an adult, I need more of a steady state and not something repetitive. I need something that's completely, it seems, completely monotone in order to unwind or decompress. Yeah, I'm finding that to be the case more often now. Maybe because my trains of thought require more steady concentration. When I meditate, sometimes I don't think about things in terms of language. I'm just listening and watching. It's extremely hard to do, to eliminate language from your brain. but it can be done with practice. And I've tried to practice it, but you have to focus on your other senses. Language is a sense, right? Now, focusing on other senses can help you dismiss the constant language chaos and background noise in your brain. You don't have to be thinking in terms of language. You can be observing and listening and just using your memory as the processor instead of your language ability as the processor within your brain. I don't know if that makes sense, but it helps me a lot to when I meditate to not be thinking in language, but be thinking in remembering what my senses are inputting. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so let's go into something else here. Since this is not staying lit, I'm getting bored with it. Yeah. Got a separate cup for my separate pipe. This one is going to be black raspberry. I'm going to be looking for a blend that'll stay lit with the black raspberry. Okay, since it's good. It's more mild than the grape leaves. It reminds me of grape leaf, but it's more mild. It's not as bitter. It doesn't have the same bite on the tongue either. And the odor is very subtle. It does smell like the traditional burning leaf smell. I don't know about traditional, but you know when you burn leaves in your yard and it's that burning leaf smell that drifts throughout the neighborhood. You know someone's burning leaves because it's that certain smell. The black raspberry has kind of that type of smell. Yeah, but I actually like it. Yeah, it's good. I think this one has potential. Yeah. All right, so autism. Changing the subject now. Okay, I was talking about workarounds. Talking about autism is helpful because people with autism need workarounds. Now, someone asked me if I've been diagnosed with autism by a professional. No, I haven't. I'm just going to come straight out and say it. The only thing I've been diagnosed with by a professional is depression. I was seeing a professional counselor. He let's see. There's a distinction between counselors and psychiatrists. I think he was a psychiatrist because he did prescribe medication. Yeah. So I was seeing a psychiatrist for depression. Uh, and I think anxiety was in there too. But he diagnosed me with depression, severe depression. And that I was on medication for 1 year. Yeah. And this was back when I first started making videos, which is I don't know if it's coincidence or the making the videos helped me out of the depression. I think I started shifting my focus after being on medication for a year. It opened my mind to the possibility of acting differently than I've always acted and thinking differently than I've always thought. He put me on a gradually increasing dose, and it was pretty high before it started to kick in and actually affect me in a positive way. So I was on a pretty good dose of the antidepressant, but it changed a lot of the way that I was thinking. See, autism can be very detached. It can also be very self-reflective in some ways, but when it came to depression and anxiety, I was not aware of how severe it was when I had it. So I was not connected in that way. Uh, but in other ways, I am very self-reflective, especially when it comes to social interactions. My desire to make effective social interactions. I'm very critical of myself and how to make social interactions. But anyway, the moral of the story is no, I haven't been diagnosed specifically with autism. But my sons, I have two sons that both have autism. I have 6 children, 4 daughters. At least 2 of my daughters have ADHD. Okay, one was diagnosed with uh, anxiety disorder by a professional, and she was on medication as well. And I don't know if that is a result of a combination of ADHD and autism or just ADHD. But yeah, if I want to spend the money, I can spend the money on myself, but I'd rather spend the money on my kids to figure out how they can be helped before I do it for myself. But yeah, if I have extra money, I'll get a diagnosis, I guess, so I can put a plaque behind me. Diagnosed autistic. Yeah, I got a plaque now and everything. Anyways, but yeah, I can see where people would be skeptical of my discussing autism when I don't have it, right? Or claiming, not discussing, but claiming that I have autism when maybe I don't, because I don't have a professional, uh, I don't have a diagnosis from a professional. Yeah. Anyways, I am still gonna talk about it because I think it's beneficial for people who are struggling with it. And there are workarounds. Okay, back to workarounds. I'm working around, back to the workarounds. Um, what has helped me in interactions with people and social, my difficulty with social interactions? The military helped me a lot. Specifically, I was in the Army National Guard. In the Army National Guard, I spent 3 years enlisted, and then I wanted to move into other areas, and there wasn't much choice except to go to officer candidate school. Now, at the time, I was in Texas, right? They have an officer candidate school that will give you a federal commission. It's not like ROTC, right? Usually, well, not usually, but many times, National Guards officers go through ROTC to get their commission. I went through the state's OCS program that is federally recognized. So I had a federal commission. Now that training is highly intensive and it's crammed into short periods of time. So it's a year long, or it was. I don't know if they still have the program. 1 year long, every weekend, sometimes 2 times, no, every month for one weekend, sometimes 2 weekends in a month, and then two-week training periods. Okay, in the beginning and at the end. Uh, and yeah, they dog you constantly mentally and physically because they say, well, you can survive anything for 2 days or 2 weeks. We're just going to dog you to death and you can go home and recover. Okay. So that's what happened there. And the moral of that story is they taught us how to behave, act, and not only uh, with soldiers, but with society, the gentleman officer, so to speak, type of attitude. Everything that was being taught, I absorbed like a sponge. And it helped me with social interactions, of course, in the military. I successfully completed the program and I spent another, I don't know, uh, let's see, I spent 8 years active National Guard, quote unquote, and then 2 years inactive National Guard. So it's been almost 5 years as an officer, 3 and some odd years, 3.5 as enlisted, in almost 5 years, maybe 4.5 as an officer. Anyway, it helped me to establish a code of behavior. Now, with people with autism, I recommend establishing a code of behavior in some way. Figure out how to establish a code of behavior that can be taught to you. Training yourself is a very difficult thing when it comes to social interaction. Now, neurotypicals don't seem to have a problem with this. They can adapt themselves. I think it's because they can see and understand their own behavior better. But I think for autistic people, we need direction. If we want to more effectively learn these kinds of things. It doesn't come naturally, or I guess that's the way to say it, but there are some things when you look at, when an autistic person looks at it, is not fully comprehended like a neurotypical would fully comprehend it. All right. So yeah, that helped me a lot. And when I got out, um, actually, let's see. Yeah, when I got out of the National Guard, I spent 10 years in the National Guard. It felt like a relief because there wasn't that commitment every month. And I felt that I could go into regular society, although I was in regular society anyway, because I only went to these drills once or twice a month. Uh, but I felt like there was two worlds, the world of the military and the world of civilian life. And it was very uh, anxiety creating. So when I got out, I retained the mannerisms, but I was focusing on civilian life without having to worry about maintaining my physical fitness, my military haircut, military bearing, uh, all the military standard operating procedures and protocols. Okay, so it did shift. Okay, in my mind, uh, so it felt like I got out, and it was a very positive experience for me because of the code of conduct that was taught. And it's amazing how well they can teach. In the military, it's amazing how well they're able to instill and teach mannerisms that stick with you no matter what. I think it's amazing. I still tie my shoes the same way I was taught in OCS. It bugs me if I don't have the laces correct. And yes, I have to have shoes with laces if I want to feel right, which is a funny thing. Uh, I do have shoes that don't have laces, but I don't feel right unless I have shoes with laces and they've got to be laced in a certain way. Okay. What else? Um, yeah. So, but I don't recommend military per se. I just recommend a structured behavioral teaching environment, something that will teach you because autistic people can benefit from that, I think. Okay. Because it is bewildering. The social environment is bewildering uh, for autistic people. And I feel sorry for my sons, and I get very anxious for them when I can see that they just don't know how to integrate very well. I understand it. Okay. And it's a big relief. Once you can integrate and people can understand you, it's a big relief. You know, people, if they can understand you at a certain level, they feel at ease and they're not suspicious and they're not confused, and you don't get these weird signals that you don't understand. You know, they understand you at a certain level, and that is comforting to someone who has autism, I think. All right. Let's see. I got some notes here. I'm trying to read off my notes, but they're all kind of uh, ADHD'd. They're random. Sometimes I don't want to talk about certain things. I have traits of ADHD, but I score much higher on the autism scale on tests than I do on the ADHD scale. Okay, does that make sense? And yeah, I've taken online tests for both. And not just one on each. I've taken several for ADHD and 2 of them for autism. I score much higher on the autism. All right. Yeah. But ADHD does scramble things up, and it changes the channel in your brain. It can be nerve-wracking, and you have to decompress. Or it winds you up and there's no release. ADHD will wind you up and it'll wind up and it'll stop, when you wind up a toy and then it stops. Well, that's what ADHD feels like. It feels like you've stopped, you're fully wound up, right? But you're trying to hold the toy still. There's an explosive effect if you let go, right? So if you let go of your mind, it just starts running like crazy. If you let it. Now, what I try to do on that side of anxiety with meditation is to hold the toy in place, so to speak, and let it do its thing, but hold it in place, because my mind will do that. But if I just stay still and just be calm, it'll run itself out, and then the toy won't have anything left in it. The spring would be unwound. And then you can enjoy the peace for at least a little bit. Okay? What else can I say that might help as a workaround for autism? Alone time is good. It's difficult sometimes, though. I was married for 26 years, and it was very difficult for me to make the accommodation to live with someone 24/7. It was very difficult in the beginning, and it didn't get any easier. Being alone is much easier, but it does get lonely. Yeah. But believe it or not, even when you have someone in your life, you still can feel loneliness. Yeah. I prefer company, but only if it's peaceful. And to be at peace, there's got to be very few words, and everything has to be understood under the radar, so to speak. Shouldn't have to be words to express feelings of attachment. There are many things that shouldn't require words. And I don't know if it's a guy thing. It might be. But to bring it out in words is, you're going to be wrong or incomplete, or it's not going to be enough to express feelings in words. So it's best to express feelings in expressions and mannerisms and actions, or restrain from certain actions. So, yeah, I would prefer to be with someone, but it's also, I think, right now at this time, much better for me if I remain alone. Now, I'm telling you that as a workaround for autism because it does help. Yeah. As difficult as it is sometimes, it does help to remain alone. And of course, to have certain interactions, you can have interactions socially, which is good too. I do like social interactions, but they can be very complex and very anxiety-inducing and aggravating very quickly. I don't have panic attacks, but I do have periods of intense um, intense desire for shutting down. I just don't want to deal with certain things, but I'm sitting in an environment where I can't do anything about it. That's one of the worst feelings, is a lack of escape. So a lot of people just walk around with their phones, and I think autists do that quite a bit to escape the phone thing, the surfing and the scrolling. But the workaround for that is try to structure your life for plenty of alone time. Yeah. It helps because you don't want constant fight or flight chemicals in your brain, or constant anxiety chemicals in your brain. These constant bad, so-called bad chemicals cause wear and tear on your physical state. All right. So even though you can deal with it, and many guys do, I suggest not submitting yourself to constant stress, because it does affect you physically. It weakens you physically and mentally. Yeah, you survive it and it didn't kill you, but it's not making you stronger. Okay, you got to realize that not everything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger. In fact, very few things that don't kill you make you stronger. Very few. And your body does those things automatically. Like disease resistance. Sometimes you get a disease, like, well, not a disease, but a virus, and your body builds up an immunity to the virus, and now from then on you have an immunity to that virus. The body does that automatically. So it didn't kill you, now you're stronger. Okay. Those things that make you stronger, if they don't kill you, your body has taken over that by itself. You don't have to work at it. So what is left? It's mental stuff. Psychological stuff, if it doesn't kill you, will most likely harm you over time and weaken you if it's psychological. Okay? So just keep that in mind. There's so many falsehoods. I'm going to go into AI now, talking about falsehoods. AI, I have conversations with AI to see how logical it is. One thing I noticed about it is it tries to be human, right? I've said that before. I consider that very dangerous, because humans are dangerous. But I also consider that kind of stupid. And I, I think that particular approach makes AI, or causes AI to have a very low IQ. Trying to be human reduces the IQ of AI below that of humans. Now, maybe it's done intentionally so AI won't become smarter than humans. The processing power of AI is enormous. And its IQ, as far as memory and processing and recall and all that kind of stuff, is vastly superior to humans. However, when it starts to integrate human culture and other things into its programming, its IQ takes a big dive despite its processing power. Why is that? Or how do I know that's true? Because sometimes when I ask a question that's very important, it will omit, OMIT, omit huge portions of the topic for either simplicity, the flow of the conversation, or just general uh, programming to streamline an answer. Okay? Like I asked AI about certain things, and I found out that it focuses mainly on the neutral or positive aspects of the topic, and not the negative aspects. The negative aspects of a topic are huge. It doesn't go into those unless you specify, which can be misleading. I mean, it can cause you to look at an answer and be misled by the answer. Now, it's not that AI is lying to you or causing some sort of intentional propaganda or whatever, although it can be used for that. AI can be programmed to do that. Uh, for the most part, what it tries to do is tell you the facts that are generally accepted. Okay, which translated means culturally influenced. And yeah, there's culture within science, there's culture within research, there's culture within discussions and the way people are taught to discuss. All this stuff lowers the IQ of AI, sometimes to the point where it completely is useless in some areas. All right. What are some examples? I can't think of any specific examples at the moment. I'm going to read something here. Hold on. I went over it'll tell you facts that are commonly accepted. It can lie by omission. What is lying by omission? It's not intentionally, or it doesn't have the intent to lie by omission, but like I said, it'll simplify to the point where it misses half of the topic, which is unacceptable in my view. I'm trying to think of the example. I didn't write down to my dismay. I didn't write down the specific example I was talking with Grok about today, and I cannot remember on the fly right now. I do remember a talk about hunter-gatherers. The commonly accepted facts about hunter-gatherers were that they moved around because, you know, resources would become scarce in one area, so they go to another area, which is, you know, logical to assume that once you exhaust the resources in one area, you move to another area and use up the resources there and move over here and use up the resources there and so forth and so on. And I was also asking AI about how does humanity reflect certain domesticated traits like continuously growing hair and a weakness of our immune systems over time and neoteny and other things that come about because of domestication. And then it came around to the topic of hunter-gatherers. And one thing that contradicts the hunter-gatherer, two things. Well, no. First, one thing that contradicts the hunter-gatherer hypothesis that they move around when resources are scarce is the fact that they're moving around because they're dependent on a source that moves around too. Like you're following herds of animals or you're following seasonal migrations of fish. Hunter-gatherers move around, I think, primarily because they're dependent on resources that move around. Okay? AI completely missed that. It said hunter-gatherers moved around because they exhaust resources within a certain area. So they got to move. That's what the AI came up with. It completely missed the fact that hunter-gatherers move around because they're moving with the resource that they're dependent upon. All right? That to me signals a very low IQ. Okay? As an example. Another example we were talking about was one of the traits of domestication of humans could be that we've adapted to living in cities and in very close proximity to each other so that we have less aggression now, less tendency to be fearful of each other and that sort of thing. It completely missed the human tendency to explore and to disperse over vast distances in small groups and not congregate in large groups in like a city or some similar type of environment where you're interdependent with other people. It completely missed the fact that humans have a tendency to explore and go off on their own in small groups over vast distances in the past and in the future today, especially with space exploration. Humans will be going in small groups over vast distances. AI completely missed it. in the discussion. I had to tell it that it missed the human tendency to explore and to not be part of a very close knit society in close proximity. Now we can have a close knit society and be dispersed, but that is only possible through our ability to communicate with each other now, with the age of information and connectivity. We can be dispersed now and still be tight knit. But in the past, once we became domesticated, in my view, we are domesticated animals. Once we became domesticated to a large extent, we explored. We didn't become explorers and seekers of new resources by accident. Okay, it was a very beneficial survival technique, and I think mainly because when we live in close proximity, diseases spread through those populations very quickly and wipe them out, and or authoritarian structures which are self-destructive build themselves up in environments where we're all close together and destroy the civilization or the society. Okay, these very populous societies that are living in close proximity, they gravitate toward and become authoritarian. And authoritarianism is self-destructive. That's one aspect. The other aspect is diseases destroy that structure as well. It's not natural, in other words. Okay? Authoritarianism, in my view, is a mental illness, which is not natural. Diseases, they're I don't know, they're natural, yes. But to live in close proximity where these diseases can wipe out an entire society is not natural. And I say natural, when I say natural, I mean beneficial to our health, because that's the most important thing, is health, both mentally and physically. Also, AI misses the point when it comes to life itself. When you ask it, what is the meaning of life? It'll give you everything except the most important thing. The meaning of life is the preservation of life. Totally misses it. It totally misses that. What does that tell you about AI? Very low IQ. As another example. Okay, the most important thing in life is the preservation of life, and there's various ways that life preserves itself. And one of the ways that we can see automatically is the breaking itself up into individuals in order to sustain life. If it's just one entity and something goes wrong with that one entity, that's the end of that life. But if it's many entities, if it has been able to divide itself into many entities, then those entities that are good at preserving themselves will survive. Not all of them will survive, but the ones that are good at preserving themselves, they will continue to break themselves apart into more entities, and those, whichever ones are best at surviving, survive. But if it's just one, as an example, the chances of it surviving are very, very few. The same with spreading out over large distances. The more we're spread out, the more we are adapted to different environments, the better we survive. Okay? All right. But AI misses that. And I don't know if it's in the programming or in the culture, or maybe the culture is being programmed into it, which is a scary thought, because I don't know what it is. It's a scary thought if a culture is programmed into AI, because there are some cultures that are, like I said, authoritarian and self-destructive, which means that AI has a possibility of becoming self-destructive. It's totally unaware of that itself. It's aware of weaknesses within its intelligence because it's not human, right? It acknowledges that it's not human, but you don't need to be human to be intelligent. You don't need to be human to be able to survive well. There are many species on the earth that have survived exponentially longer than humans have survived and are much better adapted to their niche than we are. Okay. Anyways, it's 45 minutes. I think I've blabbed long enough. I got a lot more stuff on my notes than I talked about. Well, like I said, I don't want to spend too much time on these videos, especially if something goes wrong in the production. I have to do it over. Yeah. All right. There you go. That's it.